Infidelity, long-term or a one-night stand, can destroy a marriage. How can a couple breathe life into a broken relationship and thrive once again? We have some answers today on Excellent Living. Everyone thought David and Lisa King, not their real names, had the perfect marriage. Lisa did as well, until the revelation of David's one-night stand sent her and their marriage into a downward spiral. Today, David and Lisa candidly share with our host, Cheryl Martin, their journey of his recklessness, her revenge, and their restoration.
First of all, I really want to thank you for being willing to share your story and to reopen a very painful chapter of your life. You are very transparent in your book, Affair Repair. David, you talk about a one-night stand that could have destroyed your marriage. And so my first question is, why tell this story?
Cheryl, first off, I want to thank you for having us on. As you mentioned, it's not an easy story to tell, but we believe that others can be blessed by our story. And that's the factor that was preeminent in our writing this book. When we saw so many marriages being destroyed, and in particular couples that we knew personally who felt like they couldn't go on and they were going to divorce and start over, we felt that we had to share with them our story so they could have hope that if God could work in our situation, as dire as it was, that they too could have hope and have restoration in their marriages.
So to get past the embarrassment and pain when you saw other people struggling, and have you found that this particular situation of having one-night stands or infidelity is also taking place in Christian marriages?
I would say it's taking place equally, if not more, in Christian marriages. When you look at the data out there with divorce in the church, it's amazing that we're supposed to be an example to the world, but we're leading the world in divorce. And we know so many couples who either have divorced or on the verge of divorcing, and it broke our hearts. And even though this story is very painful for us to share with others, we felt like God was leading us as part of our ministry to help restore marriages and give people the hope that despite what we've been through, God is greater than what we've encountered.
How would you have described your marriage before you fell, before you were unfaithful?
Honestly, I would say I had a good marriage. And to be quite honest, even after I fell, I thought I had a good marriage as well.
So, and that sort of goes against the fallacy of some people thinking, well, our marriage was on the rocks. So you fell, yet you would have said, I've got a good marriage.
I would have said it without hesitation that I had a good marriage. And I think part of the fallacy being...
would you have said you were in love with your wife?
I would have said I was in love with my wife. I would have said she was a good wife. I would have said she was a good mother. I know people say, well, these are the areas, or this is why I fell and why I did. I can't say that those areas were difficult for me. I would say it was my own personal struggle that I was not comfortable sharing with her or with anyone else. You talked about transparency. We weren't transparent with one another in that regard. I should say I wasn't transparent, nor was I transparent with anyone else who could have come alongside me and said, let's work through this.
So help women understand the psyche of men who say, I love my wife, yet they have an affair. I think a lot of women want some help with that.
I think that women put on men what they feel. We tend to transfer how we feel. It's the old adage, I don't understand her, I don't understand him. Literally, we don't. We're wired differently. And I think from what I've seen, women make an emotional attachment, and when they give themselves to a man, they feel like we're one, I love you, this is a bond, a commitment. With a man, on the other hand, we can love a woman and then differentiate that sex with someone else. And so for men, it's more of almost a conquest and more of an ego boost when a woman finds him attractive, as opposed to maybe a woman who feels like, you can find me attractive, but I'm fully committed to this relationship over here. Men tend to be a little bit more loose in the way they think. And I think it stems from maybe how you were raised, but also just the innate challenge that men like. Men like a challenge. And so we don't necessarily have to say, I love you to sleep with you.
So let's talk, if you don't mind, about this particular situation, your one night, and it was a one-night situation. You weren't out looking for a woman.
No, absolutely not. It was a situation where I ran into someone and a conversation, and that's where it starts. It starts with conversation. And the conversation started, and the more the conversation went, the more relaxed. Matter of fact, the more I put my guard down. I can equate it to maybe King David. He saw his visualization stimulated him. Then they begin a conversation. Say, well, same here. And after you talking and someone begins to stroke your ego, and it's a challenge. It's not, at that point, I wasn't even thinking about my wife and the effect it would have on her or our family.
You had amnesia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was, you know what, to be honest, you had that, quote unquote, that Mac Daddy syndrome, if they could say that, you know, oh, I still got game. And that's what.
Here's another woman who finds me fine.
Exactly. And the challenge of she finds me fine, and we have a conversation, and you're not thinking, today I'm going to go out and have an affair. But because I didn't have those safeguards and I did not dismiss myself, the conversation went further and further, and one thing led to another. And next thing you know, now you're breaking your marriage vows.
And marriage didn't pop into your head during any of that? Wife, children, nothing?
Never.
You just totally blank?
Totally blank. And I think the thing is, men can compartmentalize things. They can say, this is over here, and this is over here. And right now, we're dealing with this box right here. Whereas women is all connected together. With men,
it's separate.
It's totally separate. And it's like, I will take care of this part of life right now, and when this is finished,
I'm going to take care of this, and I'll go back to that later.
Exactly. That's exactly the mindset, and that's the trap that I fell into, because I was not thinking. Had I been thinking, what impact could this have on my wife? What impact could this have on my children?
But
my
weren't
marriage?
things moving so fast you don't have time to think?
You don't have time to think. And you know, I want to say this. There's no excuse. It's like the old Flip Wilson saying, the devil made me do it. The devil didn't make me do it, but the devil sets the situations up. And one thing I would encourage men to understand, you think that you got game still. No, the devil knows exactly what you like. He knows how to place temptation right before you. He knows exactly how to design the situation to make it easy for you to follow. That's why the Bible says flee temptation. If you don't flee, if you just keep walking around the edge of it, eventually you'll fall into temptation.
Lisa, we've got to get you in here. You have been listening very, very closely. How did you respond when you found out that David had cheated?
I was devastated. I could not believe that someone that I pledged my undying love to would do something so devastating.
And you found out as a result of asking him a direct question, right?
Exactly.
And that question was?
Did you cheat on me?
Mm-hmm.
Although in my heart I felt what the answer would be, but when I received the answer, I was just taken aback.
And one of the reasons is because in your mind, how would you have defined your marriage and the state of your marriage?
David is and was my Prince Charming. I just it never entered my mind that he would ever do anything like this. So to know that he broke our marriage vows and covenant, I was in a state of shock. I was overwhelmed, disbelief. Even to this day, it's still hard to believe that this even transpired in a marriage that to me was perfect.
Years later.
Yeah.
It's still hard.
It's very hard.
What was one of the telltale signs that he had been unfaithful? Because we talk about the woman's intuition. One of the things I think in the book you talk about is his pattern. You knew his pattern, and he came home late that night, didn't he?
He did. And something inside of me just knew that something was wrong. If he was going to be home late, he would give me a call and let me know. But this particular night, he didn't. So my mind went there, and I tried to rebuke that feeling, but the feeling just wouldn't go away. So it was very hard to deal with when I actually found out years later that it indeed did happen.
How did you process this? How did you deal with it? Each person is different. What effect did this have on you, this knowledge that the man that you had utmost confidence in actually had betrayed you?
Cheryl, I shut down. Things that were came to my mind, it was just unbelievable. I didn't even think that I could even think that way. The thoughts that I had were ungodly. I had to keep repenting and following up on some of those actions. Even to this day, it shocks me that I listened to the voice of Satan, and I just allowed that to override what I knew to have been better. I was taught, as a young girl, brought up in the church, so some of my actions to what he did was just unthinkable. So it even shocks me to this day that I actually sinned against God and against my husband to retaliate.
You're listening to Excellent Living with Cheryl Martin. Our guests today, David and Lisa King, not their real names, are the authors of the book Affair Repair. They are candidly sharing their story of David's one-night stand and Lisa's response to it. Despite the tragedy, their relationship has been restored and is now stronger than ever. To learn more about our guests, go to excellentliving.org. Let's return now to Cheryl asking Lisa what she meant by retaliation.
You mentioned retaliation. What came to your mind?
Well, David, one of his favorite scriptures growing up that his mom taught him was, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. My husband took that literally. He loved his name. His reputation was extremely important to him. So my final outcome of revenge was, I'm going to destroy his name, his character, so he can feel the pain that he's caused me.
And you set out to do that in what way?
Well, I decided to shoplift.
Wow.
And my thinking then at the present time was, if I were to go shoplifting, the media would come, and on television I would be seen, and David would be exposed because I would tell the whole area what David did.
So it's real interesting. You weren't concerned about your reputation and the fact that you could be possibly on television, that it would be your name. And I think that really speaks to, wouldn't you say, Lisa, that when we experience a pain so deep, we're really not thinking clearly because we're hurting so.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, I wanted him to hurt the way I hurt, the way I was hurting at the present time. So exposing the sin that he had done to me was first and foremost in my mind at that present time. I wanted to shame him.
Even if it meant your embarrassment as well.
I wasn't even thinking about me. I believe I was so overcome with hurt until I just wanted to let him feel some of the hurt, experience some of that.
Were you successful?
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, you were successful with the shoplifting, but not shaming him.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, it backfired in a funny kind of way. Now it's funny. Back then it wasn't funny.
You know what? I will have to say to our listeners, they should get the copy of your book, Affair Repair, to find out more details of that. At what point, though, we're glad to say that you're here and that we can say that you didn't spend any time behind bars, right?
No, I didn't. No,
and what do you see as a result of that? What would you attribute that to, the fact that you did not as a result of doing something?
God's grace. God's grace was upon me, and God's grace was upon my marriage. It was nothing but the favor of the Lord that allowed me not to spend time behind bars. The judge saw things that I guess I didn't even know at the present time.
At what point, what turned it around for you, Lisa? Because you were doing things, you had, even as a believer, a desire to take revenge. And I think almost any woman who's experienced betrayal has since anger, since disappointment, possibly depression. Did you go for counseling? What turned things around for you? What helped you during that most difficult time?
It was God, and it was even the judge saw that that just was not me. My pastor at that present time was there to speak on my character, and he just felt like I needed some kind of mental help. So at that point in time, he one of the judgments was that I would go see a counselor. And my husband at that point in time picked a Christian counselor. And it saved our life. It saved our marriage going through that. And it was an ongoing process. But our faith in God is what kept us together.
Even though you went to a counselor, what would you say, what really, though, brought about the healing in your heart that you could move on? Because, David, you already mentioned that the way women process things, how men are able to compartmentalize. Women, we give a man our heart, soul, everything. So, Lisa, think about the woman who may be listening, and she has experienced this, and it wasn't just a one-night stand with her husband. Let's say it was an ongoing affair, and she found out about it. And so there are layers and layers of pain and guilt, and revenge is there too. How does she get past that?
First of all, please don't try to do anything that will harm your husband or yourself or your entire family. If you can, immediately go to your pastor, go to someone that you can confide in. I shut down. After this happened, I shut down. I didn't go to anyone. I didn't tell anyone. So I had to try to process all of this by myself, which was extremely hard. David and I had a very open relationship as far as communication is concerned. We communicated all the time, but at this time, I was so distraught. I did not want to talk to him.
So you didn't tell your sisters, your parents, nobody knew you were dealing with this by yourself?
Absolutely. And my mom and I are extremely close. My sisters and I are extremely close. I shared it with no one. So I had to carry that burden around and that pain. I didn't know how to deal with it. So I would strongly encourage you, please don't do anything harmful. Go to your pastor. If thinking back now, I wish that I would have gone to my pastor and explained to him what transpired between David and myself. I didn't do that.
Do you wish at least you would have confided in at least one female friend?
Because I was never the type of person to tell my personal business. I don't even know that I would have told a best friend.
Okay.
So if they do have a best friend that they can confide in and they're very extremely comfortable in talking to, yes, go to that person or go to a Christian counselor. That helped me out a whole lot. Mm-hmm. And my faith in God. God restored us. And I mean, I'm madly in love with David, just like I was on the day we got married.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that process of falling in love again? Both you and David, if you can talk about that.
Cheryl, for me, I was in love with her. Like I said, I know for those who listen, say, well, you didn't love her. If you loved her, you wouldn't have cheated on her. And you're right, because at that point, understanding what love is now, love is sacrificial and not self-centered, whereas lust is self-centered. But I was in love with her, and I was in love with her more when I realized that she was wanting to restore our marriage. It just took it to a whole new level because I knew that she had the right to leave me. As a matter of fact, even though she shoplifted, we went through the whole process, and I know it's hard for her to share, but she shoplifted twice because the first time they wiped it clean, had her go through the program.
And she still wanted to hurt you.
She still wanted to hurt me. And part of the reason being, I was too blind to see just how much she was still hurting. And so she did it again to get back at me. And even with the risk of facing jail time after the second time, and me being a single parent, raising our small kids and trying to explain why mommy isn't here.
And that is not in your nature. You had never shoplifted in your life, right?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not
and,
even.
And not since.
No, and never will again. No.
No. So I just fell in love with her, but we began to really go through Scripture and look at Scriptures about healing, and we both said, even though we're hurting, we don't want our kids to go through the pain of divorce. And
so divorce was never an option?
Divorce wasn't an option, and especially not on my part. I had no reason to ever consider divorce anyway. But
she did.
She had a reason to, but she didn't consider, and the reason being, the number one reason, because she said, God hates divorce. Mm-hmm. And because God hates divorce, we're going to work this thing through. And really, we had to go back to square one and begin to establish trust. And especially on my part, I had to garner her trust because what she did was a response to what I had done. So I consider myself as having sinned twice with infidelity. And I feel like the shoplifting is me because it wasn't her. Anyone who knows her knows that's not her character. She responded to me. So I said, I've got to love her and let her know that I'm going to be available. There'll never be a moment where you can't reach me or know where I am. You have the right to ask me anything you want to ask me. You have the right to call me anytime. And all those things there. So I wanted her never to worry about where I was and what I was doing.
It was important for you as her husband to regain her trust. And you said, whatever I have to do. In other words, my life is an open book. Did that encourage you? Did that help you say, you know what? David means business because there aren't any closets, there aren't any rooms that I can't. So she had permission, for example, to, like even today, I'm sure to read your emails, go through your cell phone. There are no secrets.
No, she has access passwords to. Now the question is, will she remember them? You know? She'll forget them, but I've written them all down, and I leave them in different spots. But I leave, my Facebook is up. My email account she has, the passwords to all the bank accounts, everything. I don't worry about her finding anything that I'm going to be worried and try to have to explain away. And I felt that she deserved that. And if I could tell any couple anything right now, I would say live your life with each other where the person feels comfortable asking you anything. She can go anywhere with you. Not like, well, that's just me and the guys and you can't come to that.
Let's say a couple is in the middle of this now and the husband is not willing to give access to all parts. Should the wife be worried?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And women, I'll give you this little tidbit because I saw this played out as a child growing up because my father was a womanizer. And now looking back, I know what he was doing because I've done this and I've seen guys do this. When a guy wants to do something, he will almost start an argument and blame you for starting it and then say, I've got to get away. I need a break. And so don't fall into that trap. When you see he's trying to start an argument over something very mundane and asinine, just kind of laugh and just say, you know what, you're right. Because it'll mess his whole game up. If he's trying to get away from you, don't fall into that trap because men would set up situations if they want to get away. If he's not willing or if she's not willing to let you read her email or get upset with you because you looked at her text messages. I'm not saying every day you're just staring over her shoulder, but if there's nothing to hide, then you should have no problem giving out passwords and letting people see your correspondence.
Now, what about for singles? What are things that people can do even before they get married to guard the relationship, since you said that, the temptation will always be there? Are there things that couples as well as singles can do before you get into the relationship to avoid a failure?
Yeah, I think first off, part of what sets us up for failure later in life is our sexuality early in life. And that's something that we don't address. We wait until we're ready to get married to really start thinking about those things. But we got to start with kids when they're small and helping them to understand purity. I know back in the days we used to talk about that in churches. You don't hear that much anymore, but we got to explain the ramifications and the sanctification. Not that sex is wrong. What I think we do, we go to extremes. Either we let people get totally into sexuality or we preach against it as being wrong. But when kids are appropriate age, explain to them the beauty of sex, but the confines of how it's to be used. Secondly, help them to understand how to date, because the world doesn't know how to date, and our kids are following the world's models. And so you got to let singles understand, hey, first off, hang out in groups. Because I think, and I see this in churches, everybody wants to pair off and go somewhere, and then you huddle all up, you cuddle all up, you get so emotionally attached. You may not go all the way, but you're emotionally attached, and then if things don't work out and you break up, now you're scarred. Then you go to the next person. They've been scarred, you've been scarred, and you come together, two scarred people. And then you break up. We just keep doing that same process. We don't get to know each other in a friend setting and know what people are like before. And thirdly, ask those honest questions about, are you a virgin? We don't want to ask because we almost don't want to know. But ask somebody, are you a virgin, or have you reclaimed your virginity? Because some people come into the house of the Lord, they haven't been raised in that. But if they've been taught and they've made a commitment, but again, look for the signs. Does this person honor their word? That's a good starting point right there. Can they be faithful? Can they even meet me where they're supposed to meet me, where we're supposed to hang out? Or are they always late? Do they always have excuses? Those kind of things. Don't just look at how he or she looks. Look at how they interact with their friends, with their family, with the opposite sex. Are they very flirtatious? Because you see that a lot. I know a lot of guys who are womanizers, but looking back, they were always that way. Even in the house of the Lord, they're womanizers. And you can find the guys who are that way. You just ask a couple of sisters. They'll tell you, first off, I don't like when that guy comes around. It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Or during the meet and greet time, the hug is a little bit too long.
A little too long, a little bit too close, in the wrong direction, and then they want to give you a godly kiss. And those are warning signs. And sisters, let me tell you, even some of the married men who are doing that, be careful, because they're trying to see how you respond and trying to see, okay, if she's comfortable with that, I'll take it a little bit further.
David and Lisa King, one couple's amazing story of hope and restoration in a marriage that could have been derailed by adultery. There's much more the Kings will share on our next broadcast about the process of rebuilding your marriage after infidelity. If you'd like to learn more about David and Lisa King and their book, Affair Repair, just visit our website, excellentliving.org. I'm Doris McMillan, inviting you to tune in again next time to hear more about how to breathe life into a broken relationship.